Just official.
Choose the side though, because I don't like.
Always good. See, I gotta walk downstairs.
I know,
Yeah,
yeah, we're
there are
looking at
any
different,
weeds.
we're looking at a different world down there.
It is. I know.
We're always down there.
Now,
Or Sherry and Leanne are always down there.
Someone's down there.
Somebody's there.
your TikTokers are down there.
Right.
Yeah.
I didn't know what I was doing. Yeah.
That's what makes them fun sometimes. Sorry.
Oh, you're good.
You can learn it.
Trip that was.
Scott, when are you guys gonna go on TikTok? You're
When
stepping up
we-
your social media game here.
I'm trying. I don't know what I'm doing. I just tell people,
Fail forward.
tell me when.
I don't know what I'm doing. That's like us, the TikTok days. We tell Leanne just tells us what to do and we do it the best, the first time. Yeah, probably.
Then I won't. Just watch. The nineties movie Full Monty.
We learn it.
All right, folks, we will go live in 67 seconds. All right, so get situated, get comfy.
I got
Get
to
out
go
your
live on
notepad.
TV or something.
Go on, yeah, channel, whatever. So excited for today's conversation. All right, let's get this party started.
Yeah.
And I will use this gavel one of these days.
With Nick,
I should bring that to like my dinner table.
There you go. Play the song.
Play the hammer down, we started.
Get this party started. Only if you'll dance.
I will.
For those who didn't know, Scott, is it YouTube, TikTok, Instagram? Where can the world see you dance?
Who is there? It's ladies who are in charge of that.
The ladies who are in.
I saw it on Facebook.
It's definitely based.
That's where I saw it.
Confirm that.
I
Okay.
shared it on my.
All right, so we are diving in. This is week
7.
7 of 12. We're just blazing through. This week is seller pricing strategies. Next week is seller staging strategies. And I'm not sure where we're at after that, but it's on the schedule. Next week will be Melissa Sanford. Before we dive into today's topic and introduce and chat with Amy, for those who are here, last week we talked with Jose and Laura Brown from Jose's team about internet lead conversion. I know at least a handful of you were in the room for that. Whether you're in person or on Zoom, I'd love to hear an aha, a takeaway, something that you've been ruminating on throughout your week from that conversation. Thoughts? This is my fancy tea from Maslin Nutrition that I'm going to spend. Scott?
Not that I wasn't doing this anyways, but the affirmation to call, text, email. Don't give up, don't do just one, do those things. And then if you don't get a response from those, again, do that. And just keep following up and being persistent in that way, but not in a way that is being put on to the client, potential client.
Hey, thank you. Yeah, welcome, happy
He's 30.
wedding, happy,
30.
welcome to your 30s.
30.
What are we to celebrate?
This was all just a big ruse to get you here.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate it a lot.
Lamest party ever. No, this is great. All right, so Scott talked about the importance of multifaceted outreach and persistence, follow through. What else? Any other takeaways from last week's conversation?
Constantly change what you're doing, like if it's not working, kick it out and find something else that is working, like.
Importance of mixing it up.
mhm.
One more, maybe someone on Zoom. Anyone on Zoom want to chime in? Laura, you're here. Welcome back.
I like what they talked about with the website, making it sticky, making people want to come back to your website,
Yes.
like providing more value than just. If you want to scroll around, like using it as a search engine, everyone has Google, you know what I mean, but what's bringing them to your website, so I thought that was cool.
Yep. The importance of having a web presence, and a lot of people don't have any sort of web presence, so that was step one, but then what keeps them coming back? Absolutely. It was a great conversation, and thanks again to Laura and Jose. I see you there, Laura. Thank you for sharing last week. Amy, most people know you, but not everybody maybe knows you. So give us the flyover. Who's Amy Guthrie?
Yeah, so I have a small team at Keller Williams Legacy. There's 8 of us total. I specifically focus in the listing side of the business, along with Jackie Wakeham is also a listing agent on our team. We have 3 buyers agents, Tom Heidi, Andrea Campbell is a newer agent with us, and Melissa Sprouse is a newer buyer's agent with us as well. We have 2 full-time operations ladies that are amazing and keep everything running. Sherry Probst is our transaction coordinator. Leanne Bishop does all of our marketing. She looks at back-end lead generation, helps us get more people to our website. Anything to do with social media or marketing is her field. And then my husband, Chris Guthrie, he does photography for the team, and then he also does personal investments. So he manages our rentals and does flips and all that sort of thing. So I got started back in the business in 2015. And even though I feel like I've never experienced a true seller's market, right now feels
Buyer's
like,
market.
I'm sorry, a buyer's
Yes,
market.
yes.
It's always been a seller's market. Whenever I got in 15, it felt a lot like where we are today.
Yes.
Even though back in 15, I think the months of inventories was a little bit higher. Like we're getting there, we're
Mhm.
getting there, and
Mhm.
negotiations are back. And so I feel like I have some experience pulling from when I got into the business to where we're at right now.
I bought our first property just as a client in 2014. Many more years before I was going to be licensed. But I was just reflecting on what it felt like as a buyer in September of 2014 feels pretty similar to what's going on right now. Obviously, the particulars, the interest rates, it's a different environment in those ways, but the overall temperature feels pretty similar.
For sure.
You just told us about your real estate team. What do you do when you're not slinging deals? What do you?
What I try to do the majority of the time
Yeah.
is travel.
Mhm.
That's what I try to do. And that was my whole motivation for building a strong team around me. You know, I want to have leverage, and I want to know whether I'm here in Ohio or we're in Asia or Europe or someplace cool, exploring, that the business is going to run the same way if I'm here or if I'm not here. So that's what we love to do. That's what we work hard to do. And what we're super passionate about doing is seeing the world and learning about different people and different cultures and growing ourselves that way too.
That's awesome. We had Stephanie Webb on like maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago, and she had a similar, it feels different for her because she's got 4 kids and it's like homeschooling on the road, but similarly, hey, how can I live the life that I want to live and still
Yep.
sell real estate? What did you guys sell in 21 and what are you on pace to sell this year?
21, we did 171 deals. This year, our goal is 200. I'd love to hit 200. I think realistically, we're probably gonna fall in the 180s when it's
Okay.
all said and done. We started out the year really hot, and this back end has slowed down
Tapered
significantly.
a little
yeah.
bit. Yeah, and I think
Yeah,
when you reach a certain scale of business, you know,
Yeah.
that our team sells more houses than anyone in this physical room, and not the same necessarily for online. It's one thing to go from 8 units to 16 units and 16 to 30. Like you can experience massive growth at a certain scale, and then once you get up to a north of 100, it's more.
that's
it's
been
more
kind of a
incremental.
hard thing for me to swallow because I haven't been in a business for that long. And I've been used to every year, I'm up 50% or, these huge massive increases. And then you're right, once you get to a certain point, it gets a lot harder to push through that glass ceiling. But always my goal, is to beat the previous year by 5% minimum. That's my goal. And then every year I'm trying to chop my business back.
Mhm.
So this year. I'm
Meaning
doing
your personal
my
production.
personal contribution. Yeah, so my team steps up to do more.
Yep, the ratio
Um,
just.
Exactly. So this year my goal this year was 60. I'll do a little over 60 this year, but next year my goal is 50.
Okay.
So I'm looking forward to that.
It feels backwards. I'm looking to downgrade my,
Yeah, but then at the same
Yeah.
time, my team steps up and I help them sharpen their skills and
I love
so it's
that.
a win-win
You-
for everybody.
With that goal, you have to think like a business owner as opposed to just someone who's hustling.
Yep,
Which
for
is,
sure.
which is fantastic. Okay, so seller pricing strategy, and as a caveat or as an intro, we're not running slides today. We found with Ignite that particularly for those who are Zooming, the slides make it hard to actually see people who are talking. It's this tiny little thing. So we're just talking and we're going to send some follow-up resources as it's helpful. So this is just from the wise words of Amy, and I'll just ask questions that hopefully help. So let's talk about the moment that we're in. The moment we've been at, the moment that we're in as we talk about seller pricing strategy. Basically 19 through the first half of 21, when you would meet with a seller to talk about pricing, what was the strategy?
Just take the listing. Whatever. pricing you want to put on it,
Sounds
just
good.
take it.
You know, what number sounds good? And sure, let's give that a shot.
Yeah.
2 questions for the group. One is, are we in a seller's market currently?
Yes.
The heads are nodding for those that are on Zoom and can't see that. Yes, we are still in a seller's market. Anyone want to comment on current inventory we're seeing right now?
Higher than ever, or it's higher than it's been in the last, I don't know, 4 years.
Trending up, but still under 3 months of inventory. Some of that has to do with stagnation more than velocity. I think part of the challenge when in 20 and 21, people say, oh, there's just no inventory. No, that's not true. More homes are sold in 21 than have been sold in years. Inventory is there, but it was the speed at which it moved. And so things are slowing down, but fewer things are moving on as well. So second question, are there sellers in this market with unrealistic expectations?
Yes.
Absolutely. And so this, if we were teaching this class a year ago, we would probably have exactly 0 people coming to the class. Like, what do you talk about seller pricing strategies? Because you just listed and you're probably going to be good. With 90% of them, you're probably going to be good based on things have changed a little bit. I want to get the conversation started. So we're going to talk about data. How do we make good decisions as it relates to pricing recommendations? Because the number one factor for marketing a property and to selling a property is the price. Like getting price right is 90% of your marketing strategy. So we're going to talk about data, talk about kind of seller mentality and what does it look like to persuade both at the outset when you're getting the listing, as well as when you need to perhaps course correct. How many, and you can chime in on the chat or raise your hand here. How many have had to have a hard seller conversation as it relates to price within the last couple of months? I'm seeing some nods, most hands. I'm sure you have. I'm assuming that the chat it's quiet right now.
Hey, Mark. Mark, it's Dominic. I'm the mystery caller over there. Dominic, how you guys doing over there?
Doing great, Dominic. How are you?
Good. So Amy, she told me all our secrets last night at the bar, M bar. Hey, but anyhow, so what's happening is like usual, when everything shift a little bit, it takes a while for everybody to catch on, including some of the agents, right? So the sellers, I can get two conversations. One is, oh, like you're at a funeral. Oh man, I know things are so bad right now with the interest rates. And other people are saying, oh, isn't it a great time to be in real estate? So I always say, you still try to take the listing, but you want to educate them and preset them. And this is what we talked about a little bit last night, I think with Amy and Jackie, her buyer's listing agent, that sometimes you just say, okay, we'll test it, that number, only God knows what'll really happen. But if it doesn't happen within a week, we don't get much activity, then you preset them for an adjustment. So you don't delay it too long and lose the power of the market, being new to the market.
Yep. Great point. So Amy, as you're going out on a listing appointment, contrast for me, perhaps your strategy in 2019 and 2020, as you look at data. Hey, I'm preparing for a listing appointment. I know we're going to be talking about price. How do you approach that from a data standpoint? What are you looking at? What are you not looking at? What did you used to look at that you're no longer looking at as you think about a shifting market?
Yeah, and I think it's very important, like Dom touched on there, to know what you're walking into. So that first initial conversation on the phone with that seller, knowing what their expectations are. People either think, hey, hot dog, we're selling a seller's market, it's a great time for me, or they think, hey, the ship is maybe already sailed. To know what you're dealing with before you get there helps tremendously to kind of know the angle that what you're going to go in at.
How do you know?
I ask. I ask a lot of things, but one of the things that I ask is, what do you think a buyer would pay for your home? In this market, what do you think a buyer would pay for your home? Sometimes they give an answer. Usually they give an answer. Sometimes they won't. They'll just say, hey, I have no idea. And I'm like, hey, well, is there a number that you wouldn't go below in your house? And then I also dig in and I say, if you're going to stay there for the next 5 years, what projects would you do? So that's kind of a nice way of finding out what needs done in the house without saying, hey, what needs to be repaired? They're going to say, hey, we do the kitchen, we do the floors, the carpet's kind of old. So you're zeroing in with condition.
Can I circle back?
Yep, yeah.
What do you think a buyer would pay for this home? Why that specific question? Because that's not the question that a lot of people would ask. That's not the obvious question. Why are you asking that specific one?
Because that's really what matters. It's not what they think it's worth. It's not what I think it's worth. The buyers set the price, right? That's all the historical data that we're looking at of sold. That's what a buyer is willing to pay. So looking at it and kind of depersonalizing it too, and looking at it through the eyes of the buyer is always the angle that I go at it from, because it's not, it's not me. I'm not the end all be all of pricing in Stark County. None of us are. It's our job to interpret what's going on and offer the best advice to the seller to make the best decisions to get to their end goal. So once I would have that information, I would go and start pulling my comparables.
Are you ever in that kind of pre-listing appointment conversation? Are you ever offering anything price-wise to them?
Not typically.
Good. Okay.
No, not typically.
Like that was a loaded question. Please say no.
No, I
Yeah, you
clearly
haven't
don't
walked it, you
know.
don't know the condition.
Yeah, and I say, thank you for sharing this information with me. This helps me whenever I'm doing my homework to make sure I'm pulling the best comparables to review with you so we can make the best decisions on how to enter the market.
I love that question. Write that down.
So, and a pre-listing, like if you guys don't have a seller intake sheet, get one right away. We've always had one and we just realized it feels kind of like out of date for the market that we're in now. So we've completely revamped it.
We have a standard one for those who are with KW. We've got a template one that you can work from. Success is built upon repeated systems, which doesn't mean you can't modify, but having something that you're actually following and taking notes on. Again, this is simple stuff, but that enables you to scale and to refer back.
And really, a lot of our things are from the KW one. We've taken a lot from that. Some we've eliminated and some we've added, but the framework of it is the Keller Williams one that we use.
Reach out to me
So-
if you don't have that or know where that is, and I can get that to you. Yes, Scott?
Do you ask those questions over the phone?
Over the
Over-
phone.
Okay.
Yeah, because I have to have all that information before I can do my homework and know what I'm dealing with. I need to have a good understanding of their situation, the condition of the home and the situation. We didn't really dig into that because this is about pricing, but their motivation on both sides of it, huge. You need to know what's motivating them because it feels like everybody's motivation's just fallen off a cliff. So if you know what their end goal is, they want to get closer to their sister or closer to their mom and the time frame that they want to do that in, you're gonna have to pull from that later and keep reminding them why they're doing what they're doing.
Nick?
This isn't really a question, it's more of kind of a comment about the way you structure that question of what do you think a buyer would pay? I think, because one thing that I get when I was stage my question by saying, what do you think, we'd want to list your home for? They always push it back on me and say, well, you're the expert. You should know, that's what you're here for. I think when you pose it like, what do you think a buyer, a consumer would pay for your home? It kind of makes it, it puts it in their court and it makes them say, oh, maybe
Yeah.
I should have an idea.
Well-
Sometimes I feel like people are like, I'm on the phone with them and they're like selling the house to me.
Mhm.
And it's like weird concept to me because I don't know, they think they're gonna tell me things and I'm gonna tell them it's worth more or something, but taking that off of me, like, what do you think a buyer thinks it's worth? It's not me.
Yep, I like it.
I'm not-
Hey, Amy, I got something to chime in that might help you guys too. So, usually if you're trying to get a gauge on their motivation and they ask those probing questions and you say, what do you think your house is worth? Or what do you think a buyer thinks the house is worth? And they're going to say, well, I don't know. That's why I want you to come out because you're the professional. And to be transparent, we're going to get 4 opinions. So we just want to let you know that out up front. So then I'll ask it another way. I'll say, okay, give me an idea. Are you familiar with any houses that sold recently in your neighborhood? And this is where you get them. And then they say, yeah, Susie's house down the street sold. Ours is much nicer than theirs. They have this, that, and the other thing. So now you kind of know where their head is. You get what I'm saying? So,
Because they always have a number. They always have a number.
yeah,
That's their
they
whole-
don't want to tell you, they
Sure.
want you to see if you hit the number, but instead of asking them what they think, now sometimes they'll offer it and say, oh, I had an appraisal 6 months ago, or I, got an equity line or something like that. But if you always say, well, are you familiar with any houses that maybe sold around here recently as I'm doing my homework? And they'll say, oh yeah. And then, so then you can kind of get their heart, what their heart really is. And then you can tailor your presentations accordingly too.
Amy, if they, say it's a neighborhood where, you've done a little bit of research or you know where the address is or whatever, and it's a neighborhood where the average home is selling for 225 and they say, oh, a buyer would pay 300 for, like, if you even get a sense right out the gate that they're not in the realistic realm, are you trying to engage with that at all in that conversation?
Not
Or more just, you're just tucking
Not
it
really.
away?
Yeah, I'm just tucking it away. And then I'm going to do my homework. And then once we get there, I'm gonna dig into that. I know going in that this person has unrealistic expectations. So we're really gonna dig into the comparables.
Great.
And we're gonna look at what things sold for, and then I'm gonna say, so how do you think your home stacks up to this one?
Great. So, great segue for me. So you've hopped off the call. Now you're hopping into your pre-listing appointment prep. You're doing the research, you're looking at comps. How much time, how far back are you looking? As you look at data now, thinking about how the market has changed and data a certain amount of time ago may not be all that applicable to now. How are you narrowing your focus as you run comps? How is your practice changed?
I'm trying to stay like 2 months, 2 to 3 months if possible. Sometimes that's hard if you don't have enough historical data. It's always, we need to be looking forward and pricing for the market that we're going in, not pricing for the market that we're coming out of. So if you're looking at comps that are a year old or even 6 months ago, they don't feel relevant. They're selling for much higher than what things are selling for now. So looking at most recent sold, looking at what's active on the market is, I feel like it's always huge
Always,
because
yeah.
that's your current competition.
Mhm.
And how do you stack up? If average days on market for this area is 40 days and they need to sell in 20 days, like, guess what? To buck that trend, we have to be the best value in that neighborhood if we're going to sell first. Also taking note of the actives. What did they start price wise? How many price reductions have they done? So this helps you because you can look at other people's kind of mistakes, how they enter the market too high. So you can convey, hey, I don't want to do that with you. Like, I want to go and write the first time, get a buyer who's going to pay that or possibly a touch more, because multiple offers still are happening.
Mhm.
If you have a good product and you price it right. But kind of using that to tell the story of what we don't want to do. And then also looking at things that are withdrawn or expired are important right now too.
Yes, so historically, anything up to 180 days back is something that you might factor in, and I'm hearing you say, maybe cut that in half. Because 6-month-old data isn't what it used to be.
Right.
I mean, it is what it used to be, it ain't what it is anymore.
And I think like in the shift book, it talks about looking at your comps and the lowest one is now your ceiling, like in a market that's declining really fast.
Mm.
I don't know if that's true of where we're at right now, but I would not be higher than the average.
And we'll talk more about that in a minute, pricing for where the market's heading as opposed to where we've been.
Yeah.
Because that's, if there's one or two taglines, that's gonna be one of them. In Shift, they talk about the window of opportunity. So sometimes people say, sure, we'll give it a shot. But we'll be prepared to course correct, and we'll talk more about that in a minute, but talk with me about getting it right the first time. And so Gary will say, let me pull it here. Your window of opportunity is the first time that someone sees a house, and it's the single best chance to create the impression that will sell the house. So a house 2 or 3 weeks in is not in its window of opportunity that it once was. So let's dive deeper on that. Why do you think, if you think, getting it right the first time matters?
Right. If we get it right the first time, we're going to have buyers chasing us. We're going to look like the best value online. We're going to have buyer activity, and we'll know that we hit the price right because we have showings. People want to come see it like right now. And we could still position ourselves to be in a multiple offer situation where we can get what we're asking or maybe get a little bit above that. So you never get, a second chance to make a first impression type of thing. So if we don't hit the mark with the pricing and we have to continuously reduce it to get it within the realm of what a buyer is to pay, we know it's going to be a longer, harder, rockier road for the seller because the buyer's going to see, oh, this has been on the market for 30 days. Okay, I can go and offer significantly less, or they start thinking like, what's wrong with it? Does it have foundation issues, things that I can't see? And then the offers start going in significantly lower. So it's my job or our job as sellers agents to talk through with the seller what they want the outcome to be. If they're okay with a longer road, okay, we can price it at that. But we're going to have to continuously talk about getting it into the realm of when buyers are going to start looking at it by doing price reductions. And at the end of the day, we're going to probably get beat up. People are going to write lower. They're going to negotiate harder through inspections because now that buyer has the leverage and we don't have the leverage anymore.
Everything, this is being recorded, so you can go back and I can share a link afterwards where we're putting all of these videos. Everything that you just said could just be said in a listing appointment. I felt like we were getting listing agent Amy for a second there. Your job is to persuade and to go into a listing appointment prepared not to fight the seller, but to make as strong a case as possible, because the second window is not nearly as good as that first window.
Right. And at the end of the day, it's not our choice. It's not our home. It's not our asset that we own. It's their choice. Our job is to show them the facts and interpret the facts and say, hey, we could do this or we could do that. At the end of the day, it's your choice and I'm working for you. So I'm going to do what you want me to do. But this is, if you're asking me my suggestion, this is the suggestion that I would make to enter the market.
How are you mentioned a few minutes ago about it's all about their motivation, which is totally true. And in the shift, we talk about, we find the motivated. We're in the relationship business and find the motivated as we go. We talked about that a little bit yesterday with Ignite. How are you, what questions are you asking? How are you discerning their level of motivation in the process?
One of my second questions on the intake sheet is, why they want to make a move. Why is it that you want to sell this house and get into something else? And then I just follow their lead from that. So whatever they tell me, maybe they'll say, hey, you know, the woman I talked to yesterday, her husband had passed away. The home's really big for her, you know, it's 3,000 square feet. Her son lives in Uniontown, she's in Wadsworth. It's really far for him to drive to help mow her lawn. She just can't do it on her own. Now, this is a person that's motivated. And I said, okay, what's your timeline? When are you looking to be in your next home? She's like, oh, well, I don't really know. I'm not in a huge rush. But from what she told me, yes, she has a need and she's a very highly motivated person. So it's just getting the things in place to get her into her new home so then we can sell her existing. But you know, people that just want to move out of opportunity.
Yeah.
That's gone, right?
Yeah,
Those
so
people are
let's,
not there
that's where I
anymore.
was gonna go. I'm the guy, I was actually at this place, there was a guy who's like, I'd sell at the right price, but my price is not realistic.
Mhm.
In the previous market, you might say, let's give it a shot. I mean, maybe
Right,
give it a
right.
shot. Are you taking that client now? Are you pushing them into the realm of
I would dig
realization?
deeper with them.
Good,
I
a
would
lot.
dig deeper with them, because if they are dead set on that number. And you know that number is not realistic, you have to decide if you want to take that on. And know going into it, if they truly aren't motivated, you might not be able to sell it. Is it worth you taking that listing? Do you think you're gonna get enough buyers from that listing to make it worth your while? You have to decide that. You know, we have a kind of like Zillow, I don't know if they still have this or not, but the Make Me Move.
Mhm.
Like, we have a tab on our team sheet, that's a Make Me Move. So when we talk to folks, they're like, oh yeah, I'd sell my property for 600,000. Okay, well, we'll put it on there. So if we have a buyer, we'll try to match make it and take a buyer and show them off market. And then that could be a segue of possibly sparking some motivation inside of that person that now we can go back in and possibly try to list it if they're motivated. But that's a tough question. And I think each person has to decide on their own if they would want to take something like that or not. But if somebody's really unrealistic and they are dead set on it, you're probably not going to sell it.
And I think, okay, yeah, he who has the listings has the business, and so, who would ever not take a listing? But the business you choose to take is also your brand. It says something about you, and a sign sitting in a yard for 3 months that you know is going to be coming out because they're outside of the realm of possibility isn't actually great marketing.
Yeah. And something that's significantly overpriced, I don't know how many leads you're going to get on it anyways right now.
Yeah. Elba, you were going to chime in? Oh, you weren't? Just moving. Yeah, Scott.
I have a question with some of the clients you meet with, you know, for the last 2 years, people didn't do repairs, didn't do things to the home to prep it. Are you starting to have conversations when you go into a home saying you should probably take care of this, make sure it looks a certain way, that sort of thing with some of the listings now that maybe you don't?
Probably more so. Yeah. We're advising people to do more things to make it more marketable. It also, again, goes back to that person's situation. You know, if somebody has a looming foreclosure. I had one of these recently, like, time is of the essence. Let's get this place cleaned out and cleaned up and let's put it on the market. Or I'm going to try to match make you with maybe one of our investors that can buy it off the market, get in here and fix it up and resell it. Like an easy peasy, get you out of this bad situation right now. So yeah, to answer your question, it depends on the situation, but if somebody wants prime dollar, 100%, they need to do more. Because I'm sure you guys are feeling this, that the buyers are getting more and more picky. At any price range, they're more and more picky. They don't really want the fixer upper. They want something that's fixed up or flipped. The flipped ones, if they price them right, seem to go still in multiple offers.
Yes. Justin, I'm going to call on you here if you're able to unmute. Justin just said, am I the only one that's controlling when it comes to things like this? And I'm assuming that means you come in stronger, you say, this is what we're going to do. Tell me more tell us more how you approach that.
Are you asking me?
I'm asking Justin.
Okay.
Justin B. If you're not able to, that is. Okay. I don't see you anymore. Maybe you posted and ghosted.
You told me you're gonna call him, so he left.
I gotta go. Say, and Rachel Hogue is on here. I think, Rachel, one of the things that you do well is you ask questions that help make it the seller's idea. You show them data and you enable them to interact with that. So the person that's just, this is what I'd sell it for, who you may never be able to reason with them. Okay, you can only go so far, but most people aren't that person.
Mhm.
And so our job is to put data in front of them. Let's show them, oh, my house is the nicest one on the block. Okay, well, here's the comps. Do you think that's actually true? Because everyone thinks their house is the nicest one on the block. And there's only one nicest house on the block.
Yeah.
But asking questions in the wake of data to lead them to say, what do you think we should come in at?
And it's amazing how you keep asking questions and then you get like the real answer. Like at first they're putting on this front because they're trying to sell it to you. And then the more you dig into it, the more like realistic they become. But I think you're exactly right. You don't want to make it an environment of it's me versus you. You think your house is worth 300. I think your house is worth 250. Like this is not good. Because at the end of the day, like I'm their advocate. We're a team, right? Like, so we're gonna come up with decisions together as a team. Because at the end of the day, my job is to get you the best price and the best terms and to hit your goals in the time frame that you want to hit your goals. Now, we assume most people want to do that as fast as possible, but that's not always the case.
Right.
So it's a two-way street. You know, I don't make the market, I interpret it and I help you get the best results.
Right. So you said a few minutes ago, let's price to where the market is heading. What does that mean? And take us deeper on that.
Mhm. So looking at the data, again, back to like, we're gonna look 30 days, 60 days. And also knowing the numbers. Like I am a geek right now with this. Every Monday I have a spreadsheet. I put in the numbers. So I always know how many price reductions happened that week, how many properties expired. What's the average price? You know, that's dropped in the last quarter. Looking at months of inventory is something that we're watching again. And you can get like really specific and look at that per area or per school zone too, to see where areas are still hot and what areas are starting to cool down.
Per price point, I mean, you could
Per
look at that
price
data
point,
per
yeah.
any.
You could
kind
do
of normal
this for your
filter.
listing appointment.
Yeah.
You know, if you have a good idea, but first you have to have a good idea of what you're dealing with, so you can go and make sure you're pulling the right data.
Yeah.
But this is very important.
Well, and I think just to highlight that, so there's preset stats and reports that you can pull in the MLS that give you this information that you could pull at any point in time. But I think that was great. And then a habit to adopt is you're doing it every Monday. So it's, you look back in your spreadsheet, oh, there were 120 price reductions last, 2 weeks ago. In
Yeah.
the past week, there were 180,
Mhm.
and for you to bring in that granular level of data to show Mr. and Mrs. Seller, like the market is moving in that direction. We can do a price reduction. It's not the end of the world, but the market ain't warming back up.
Right,
Right.
and telling them, in a market that's declining, the best price is the price that you're going to get today, right?
Mhm.
You don't want to chase the market down. You want to be ahead of the market so you can get the best price at the end of the day. Somebody used this analogy on like a podcast I was listening to. It was pricing too high in a market that's declining is like trying to catch a knife when it's falling,
Yeah.
right? You're gonna get cut. It's not gonna be good.
And it doesn't need to,
Doesn't need to be that way. We can avoid it.
well, I was gonna say, it doesn't need to be that much.
Mhm.
Like a house that's worth 118, if you list for 125, may get stuck. And that's exactly the situation that one of our agents is in. It's, oh, we're up 130, 120, these, and he's close,
Mhm.
but they got it 10 grand wrong. And 10 grand wrong in the seller's market covers a multitude,
Yeah.
but it's exposed and he's holding an open house every weekend for it, trying to get this thing
Right. What
moved.
did they say? It's 5%. You're listed 5% too high if you're getting showings and no offers. So if you've had over 10 showings and no offers, you're probably about 5% too high.
Okay.
If you're not getting showings at all, you're probably around 10% too high.
So say that again, you're probably 5% too high if you're getting
If you're getting showings, at least 10 showings, but no offers.
Yep.
Now, if you're
It's
not getting
close enough for
showings
people
at
to want
all,
to see it,
yeah,
but if they're not even coming and seeing it, then you're,
at least 10%. Yeah.
That's great.
And then in the shift book, they use this analogy too, which I really, really liked. It was talking about fishing and like, you know, if you put your line in the water up here at 10 feet, nobody's biting, and the fish are down here at 40 feet, you know, how you have to progressively get down to that point where the fish are before the feeding frenzy starts.
Mhm.
And I'll see this all the time. Somebody will miss the mark by 10 grand or so. They'll do a big price reduction. Now they're in multiples.
Yeah, yeah. You gotta be decisive. The little dribble down, it,
Mhm.
you know, they can see it and the dribble down, people are,
Mhm.
you can, the feeding frenzy is coming
Yeah.
20 grand.
And I believe also like looking at stats, if you're looking at, you know, Zillow or Realtor.com and the amount of saves that you have on there, if people are saving it and they're not coming to look at it, that also tells you, hey, they like it, they like the area, they like the house, but they're watching it
Mhm.
to see if it's gonna price reduce, because they believe it's priced too high for the value.
Close enough for them to be interested.
Exactly.
No, that's
Exactly.
really good and that's really practical. So say you failed at convincing them to come in and price beneath the market.
Mhm.
What deals are you making with the seller? So, you know, fine, you know, they're holding their ground and you're not so far off that you're not unwilling to take so many negatives in there. You're still willing to take the listing.
Mhm.
Are you saying, you know, by this date, we're going to adjust? Are you saying, let's just see?
Mhm.
How do you set yourself up for the future relationship?
Mhm. A lot of times we take listings like on a Thursday or a Friday and then have an open house on Sunday. We
Okay.
still do that strategy. So I always say that the opening weekend is going to tell us a lot. Are we having showings? Are we not having showings? Are people interested? Are they not interested? Like the market will tell us in that first weekend what's going on. If I could get them to reduce it after the first weekend,
Mm.
If it's crickets, then I totally would push to do that. I wouldn't let it go for longer than a week.
Crickets
Crickets.
equals fewer than 5 or 7 showings in that first weekend.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think that's really true.
And then a week in, yes, you have to do something.
Yeah,
And I would set the expectation right now that whatever that day of the week is, that you want to follow up with your sellers, that every Friday at noon, you're going to call them and go over the market statistics. You know, what the market's saying about your listing. Again, it's not what I'm saying, it's the market, what the market is saying about your house.
I love that. Plenty
Not
of people
me.
check in, see how you doing, or, you know, how are you
Yeah.
feeling? It's a more of a relational check-in, but we say, market update Monday,
Yep.
here's what we're seeing.
And we're gonna talk about the showings that we had, the feedback that we had, the stats that we're pulling from online. We now have like a marketing stat update sheet that Leanne made for us, so we just go and pop in the numbers and email that over so we can dive into it. And what I'm finding, like, this was like a shock to me. This just happened this month because things are like living on the market longer. You know, since all of our marketing is pretty much online these days, like this person like thought I wasn't doing anything. He was like, so we're not gonna have another open house this weekend? I'm like, well, we just had an open house and we had one person come through. And if we're staying at the same price, I really doubt, you know, we're gonna have any visitors. And he's like, well, what's the plan? What are you doing? Like,
Mm.
it's all online. He can't physically see
Yeah.
what I'm doing. So that like really hit home to me. They don't know what we're doing. And I've never had to face that before because things sold so fast.
Mhm.
You know, you really even had to do like a weekly check-in. So that's when we developed that sheet to show, hey, this is how many people looked at it on Zillow.
Yeah.
This is the video that we did. We had X amount of people interact with it and it drove X amount of people to our website. Like, this is what's going on. People are looking at it. We're
That's-
doing the things behind the
that's a great
scene that we
point.
need to
I think
do.
Maintaining seller confidence in you.
Yes.
Who is that? They're not doing anything. I was hoping they'd come and wash the windows and plant a new flower or something, you know,
Yeah.
who knows what they're hoping for, but for you to show we're paying attention, we're still the experts, we're attending to this,
Yeah,
even if it's just showing them how many saves there were on Zillow, which
Right.
that's all public knowledge in a lot of ways.
they don't go
But
look
that
for it.
shows them that you're working.
For sure.
When they may have expectations that they haven't voiced to you about what working for them looks like.
Mhm.
Yes, Scott?
When you are doing market updates with your listings, how narrow do you take that market? Is it by the neighborhood, community? How do you determine that what market you're showing them the update for?
So the updates that I'm doing is more like what my marketing efforts have done online. But something I didn't mention, I've started setting people up with an MLS search. So they can see what new competition's coming out. Oh, what competition went under contract, and so how fast. And that's another thing we can talk about on Friday at noon when we have our, weekly powwow. So I would set them in an MLS search that would pull similar properties. Like I would probably pick that school zone. So you have enough to show them on a regular basis, that school zone, similar age, similar square footage, similar price points.
That's a great tip.
Yeah.
We think, oh, I'll set my buyers up on a search because they need to see the inventory, but you want to keep your sellers in reality, and reality is coming to their inbox every Monday via an
Yeah.
MLS search.
And then
It's great.
you can talk as the expert too. So on Friday, when we have that conversation, like this morning, there was a competition house to my house that I have listed in Plain, and our deal fell through, unfortunately. It's a clean inspection, but the buyer basically got cold feet. Another one that was competition that was priced very aggressively and went under contract before ours is now back on the market too.
Mhm,
So
mhm. And we're gonna be seeing more of that.
unfortunately.
Yeah, Nick?
Yeah, I think just as it's important to have the stats for what your seller's competition was, what, comparables, it's even more vitally important once it's listed to keep them up to speed. I think I've never thought of putting them on a portal. I've just done the work myself and
Mhm.
filled them in. Now that just makes it
Yeah,
way easier.
yeah. And I don't know if they always look at it, but it also keeps you informed too.
Nick's gonna run out the door celebrating.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and then when you have that update, the weekly update, they've kind of got some homework to kind of look at to see, if they
Yes.
don't look at it, then fine, but at least you said, hey, I sent you some stuff that's sold.
You're doing your
Or the
job.
new stuff that's popped up.
Well, and that underscores what you said earlier about we're partners in this, we're partnering
Mhm.
together. And so for them to have a lot of the same information that you're looking at,
Right.
makes that all the more true.
Mhm.
So you reach the point, circling back what you said a minute ago, by the first weekend. I think a lot of people, oh, let's give it 2 weeks, let's give it 30 days, fine, we'll let you run your experiment, but in 2 weeks or a month. You said first weekend, and I think that's a point worth making, and coming in with more strength in that listing appointment is like, we're not gonna have like imaginary people emerging 10 days later than what we saw right away. Your moment is the first couple of days. And so to be stronger and say, I'm gonna be calling you on Monday and we're going to see where we're at and setting that expectation, I think that's really wise.
Because I think in this market and the market that we're heading into, if the sellers aren't getting the results that they're hoping for, we're the culprit, right? It's not
Yeah.
anything wrong with their house or their price. It's us. We're not doing our job. And if you're not communicating with them, they really think you're not doing anything.
Yeah.
So then they're thinking, oh, maybe this is not the right person for the job. I need to find somebody else to list my house with. They start having conversations with other realtors, and we need to show our value more so than ever right now.
Mhm. No, that's a great point. One of the comments in Shift, kind of a set aside boxes, was the relationship with the seller is a lot like a counselor in grief with someone. You're going through the 5 stages of grief. What is it? Denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. And our job is to counsel them through it. So I'd love to hear whether it's a story or an example or how you approach that as you're walking with someone who's coming to reality slowly. What does that look like for you in your business?
Gosh, I feel like I haven't had to coach people through all these stages of grief once we've been on the market, because things have just started slowing down. But on the front end of it, whenever you meet with somebody and they think their house is worth something significantly more than what it is, it's just educating them. I probably spend more time than most agents whenever I meet with people. Like, I go over the comparables with them. And sometimes I feel like I might be like boring the pants off of them. So I try to skim it down and just show them the ones that I think bring the most value. So I have to know the handful of comps that I picked really well before I get that listing appointment, if I'm only going to pull, 3 or 4 out of the 10 that I pulled. But them seeing it and me walking them through that property and where that property started and how long it was on the market and what it ended up selling for. And okay, they took this offer and they paid $5,000 of their seller's closing costs. So really they sold it for $5,000 less. Like really taking the time to go through that and show them the data really helps them realize
Mhm.
that this is the market, this is realistic. I'm not just making this up, but this is the facts. of
You're here
where
to
we're at.
educate more than sell.
Right, and it's, it's still a great time. We are still in a seller's market.
Mhm.
We came out of a market that was just bonkers, like just silly, to tell you the truth,
Mhm.
with what people were paying for homes. People are still getting a good return out of their homes.
Mhm.
It's just simmered down a little bit.
Right.
So conveying that, you've not missed the boat. But we do need to price it right now, if you're
Right.
motivated to get this home sold and move on.
Right. Another line that I liked, and we'll shift gears in a second here. And I think this is a line worth using in conversation. In a shift, most sellers are actually triers who never become solds. And I think that's worth voicing. Like, hey, the market's changing, and if we do this, there are homes that aren't selling, there are homes that are expiring, there are homes that are reducing their prices, and I've just showed you that data.
Yeah.
Do you want to be a trier or do you want to be a seller?
Mhm.
And obviously you can't guarantee future outcomes, but sussing out their motivation
Mhm.
and holding them to that, I thought was
Yeah,
pretty
in the
good.
book, it talks about pricing. When you're in the market, you can be on the market or you can be in the market. Am I saying that the right way? It's the big amount that's in the market, but to actually be on the market is a small percentage
Right, yep.
and that's all goes back to the pricing.
Mhm.
And in a severe buyer's market, they say really only 20% of the houses are in the market.
Correct,
Mhm.
right. And to the point you made a minute ago, as it shifts, this whole shift we're still in a strong seller's market, and this whole shift may remain in a seller's market the whole way through. Like, we have a ways to go before it becomes a bona fide buyer's market. No one knows the future, but I think that's important for us to understand. Like, we don't know how low it's gonna go, but it may stay north of 6 or south of 6 months of inventory the whole way through.
We're still far away from 6
Yeah,
months.
it was
so,
2.3 as of last week in Stark County.
Yeah.
So not even halfway there. Scott?
So situation where you have the listing goes under contract at a certain price, but it falls through. We know that has an impact on future buyers and offers. Is there a price adjustment? Do you stay with that? What's the conversation you have with somebody who now says, well, I had it under price for this much, so I expect that much now with the next offer. But we know people say, well, there must be something wrong with it. How do you handle that conversation
Mhm.
with a seller?
Right, I mean, it's unfortunate if something falls through,
Yes.
especially if it's not your seller's fault,
Yes.
but it is what it is. And, we need to charge forward. I guess there's some different circumstances in this. If you had it priced at a certain point and they accepted an offer that was, I don't know, 10 grand lower, 8 grand lower, you might talk about doing a price correction before going back on the market to trigger some more activity if somebody's motivated to get it under contract again. And, I would explain to that seller that, again, go back to the market that we're in. If we're in a declining market, we have the best chance of getting the best return right now. So let's try to capitalize on where we are right now and find the next buyer as soon as possible. The sooner we find that buyer, chances are the higher of a price we're going to get. The longer we sit, the market's going to decline more. And then also the buyer's perception is going to change. They're going to start
Yeah.
thinking, gosh, it's been sitting on the market. What's wrong with it? Or I'm going to negotiate really hard because now it's been sitting for 60 days. And then I typically put in the broker's remarks, why it fell through, because that's going to be everybody's question that calls you.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
And if you can, a lot of times I will ask for the if I get a feeling that the home inspection report was decent, I will ask for that with the seller signing the release. So then I have that to take into my next deal. Chances are the next buyer will take that and go forward as is. And then you're not going to have to negotiate through inspections, which is going to chip away at your seller's bottom line anyways. So. Mhm.
I forget, it was week 1 or 2, I forget who said it, but an important thing to think about with price is that the price you're listing it for is the marketing price, not the sale price, you know, and how do we want, I think Rachel said that, how we market it matters. So to put that in the seller's mind, hey, what's our marketing price? Because the market's gonna tell us what it's worth.
Yeah,
How do we want to engage with that?
right. And that's just a price to intrigue people to come and look at it.
Correct,
Right,
correct. Yep, get at least 10 people in the door writing offers, right?
exactly.
7 maxim. So this is hitting on a lot of what's already been discussed, and I'll share this with you guys afterwards, but 7 kind of rules as you think about selling. Number 1, be a student of your market, know your numbers, we've discussed that. Number 2, focus your main comps on actives. Pendings and solds may already be out of date. Number 3, be a student of property, preview them so you understand what is selling and why. Number 4, keep your presentation as current as possible. Let your ongoing research doing the talking. I think your weekly check-in touched on that. Number 5, pre-qualify for motivation. That earlier conversation, sellers who most need to sell most often. 6, we've discussed this, price ahead of the market to avoid chasing it. And then 7, always secure price reductions in advance to avoid falling behind the market. That is getting there. If we don't know this by this date, here's what we're agreeing to do.
Yep.
That kind of concludes kind of any sort of formal guidance to this conversation. Other questions, thoughts, or tips that are working for you in this market or have worked in the past for those who have experienced different shifts over time? Looking at you, Linda, and Elba, you've been licensed for 20 some years as well.
I just told a potential seller this morning, along with all because I'm big numbers too, I'll dig down in and all that, but he wanted to list it for significantly higher amount, and I said, ultimately, I did say, I work on commission, you and I both know that. Don't you think if I could possibly get that number, I wouldn't really want to try?
Yeah.
And he did, he had like a light bulb moment of, yeah,
We both want to make as much money as possible.
exactly. You know, I don't like to take it to that,
Yeah.
but it worked.
Yeah, I think sometimes you never want to create an adversarial relationship with you. And, oh, what are they trying to do? They're just trying to do this. Like,
Right.
I want to make good money here too. Reduction impacts us both. Yeah. Other thoughts or
I've
comments?
tried
Yeah,
that,
Nick?
just to caveat that, I've tried that before and I've had it thrown back in my face. Cause then they say, well, I'm standing to make $88,000 more than what you are in the commission, or 88%, I'm sorry. So the 6%, if that's what you listed for, you know, $30,000 difference, yeah, it only means 6% of that for
Sure.
you as a listing agent.
Sure.
But it's a lot more, I've got a lot more, you know, to lose.
Sure.
by now. So I've had that thrown on my face before.
One thing we didn't hit on that I'll ask a quick second here. So in the price reduction conversation, and we've all been in this situation where, okay, I'll do that if you'll do this, meaning,
Mhm.
will you meet me in the middle? Will you reduce your commission because you're asking me to do the same? How do you engage with that question
Oh,
or that
gosh.
expectation?
Jesus, no.
Yeah, no. No, I wouldn't say it like that. I mean, I would hope from the beginning that I educated the person and had realistic expectations of truly what the value was. That I didn't overinflate or give misinformation to lead somebody to believe that, you know, they were gonna get this pie in the sky number. I guess I would say, you know what, like, I can't, you know, fault them for asking, you know, however, you know, my team is a business, you know, I have full-time people that I pay a salary to every week. We have marketing things that we do that we spend money on doing, you know, I have the investment up front. And I'm committed to getting the property sold, but unfortunately, I'm not able and not willing to reduce my commission because it doesn't change the work and the effort that I've put into getting the property sold. That's how I would answer. Mhm.
Good. Other thoughts or questions or things that are working for you?
Well, another thing that I would add, whenever you're working with sellers, pretty much probably everybody's doing a net sheet, I would assume, whenever you take a certain price. Add into that net sheet repairs. That will save you, because buyers are going to negotiate repairs right now.
Yeah,
There's
'cause they
no
can.
buts about it. And you don't want to set your seller up for failure over, $2,000 or
It's all
whatever.
about managing expectations.
Exactly.
Hey, let's factor in $5,000 worth of repairs, and you may think at most
Mhm.
it would be 1,000 or two, but
Yes.
better to err on that side.
Yeah. And same thing with whenever you're doing price reductions. If you get down to a certain price and the seller's not going to negotiate from that price, don't go to that price. Because the buyer's going to see, and the buyer's agent's going to see, hey, you've done 3 price reductions, now you're at this price, guess what? They're gonna negotiate again.
Mhm.
And you want to be in a position that you can get a deal together with a buyer.
One other little tip that I learned a bit the hard way earlier this summer is if you're having a pre-listing meeting, hey, we're meeting, we're talking about what you're wanting to do, all of that, and it's 6 weeks or 8 weeks before they're actually gonna list. You can have a preemptive price conversation, but don't have any sort of firm price
Yeah.
conversation because the market moves a lot in that area. And I had to go back and have because we did, here's what I think probably is about right. And 6 weeks later, from June into July was a pretty different market. And I had to come back and say, hey, if we came in there, I don't think we're gonna be selling it anytime soon. I think we need to come in 15 lower than it was. And that was a hard conversation. Could have been avoided if I said, let's just revisit this as we prepare to go live.
Right.
Um,
Yeah, always
They-
gonna put that little.
They
warning
wanted to
out
have
there.
that conversation in order to know who they wanted to work with, which was tricky.
Yeah.
But put it off as late as you can, if you can.
Right.
I think that I love that from a lending standpoint, because like when we're pre-approving a buyer that has a house to sell,
Mhm.
like if they come back and they have repairs or they have to do a price reduction, it can change their pre-approval for the house that they're buying. So the fact that you're being really conservative with that is awesome, because then it could properly qualify them for their new house.
Okay.
So that's such a good idea.
That's a great point.
Yeah, because sometimes like if they come back and they're $5,000 less from the net sheet that we got, it could throw their approval off on the new house if they were like really tight on their debt to income ratio. We have that come up a lot.
Mhm.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's a fantastic point. Yeah, Nick?
I just thought of something too, based on what you just said, Mark, because there are people when you go on that pre-listing walkthrough where they want to know a price, and then if they're 8, like you said, 8-10 weeks out, a lot can happen, right? And if you know that they're potentially gonna meet with somebody else, and I've been in that situation before, and I'll say, hey, another agent might give you a price. That's not an agent that I'm gonna want to work with, because they're gonna tell you that, and they don't realize, or they're not gonna know the market enough to know that a lot's gonna change. And I don't want to set unrealistic expectations for you. And, it just makes you look like more of the expert.
I think whenever
That's a
you
good point.
quote that
Headed off
price,
to the pass.
you look at the data and you say, okay, if we're gonna go in the market today or tomorrow, this is the sweet spot.
Yep.
Right? That we think we're gonna get the
Fine
most
print underneath
active.
of it.
Right.
Yeah.
But we're gonna relook at this data before we go in the market to make sure we're still hitting that mark.
Yeah.
Right.
Mhm.
Great point. It's 1:02, and I want to honor everyone's time. Thank you for those joining us. Thank you, Amy, for sharing your
Thanks for coming.
expertise. Really appreciate it.
Yeah,
This
you're
is
welcome.
recorded, and for KW agents, it's on legacygroupguide.com. There's a tab where Amanda's dropping them. I can share that link with anybody who wants it, so just reach out. Go and list realistically. Don, did you have a closing word?
I just was saying, good
Thanks, Don.
Thanks, Dawn.